Tonight, we're back once more in Westminster, where one of the key figures in the Labour government, Wes Streeting, their health secretary, has resigned, saying he's lost confidence in the Prime Minister, and now Andy Burnham has made his move. So what happens now? How many rivals will join a leadership contest, and when? Tonight is the first chance to hear what the viewers, the voters, our Question Time audience make of the chaos here in Westminster. And as usual, they reflect the general political picture across the nation. Welcome to Question Time from Westminster. The Foreign Office Minister Baroness Jenny Chapman, a close ally of Keir Starmer. She also ran his campaign to be leader in 2020. Michael Gove is a Conservative peer and editor of The Spectator, one of the architects of Brexit. He also knows a thing or two about leadership struggles, having seen the demise of 3 Tory Prime Ministers up close. Steve Wright is the General Secretary of the Labour-affiliated Fire Brigades Union. He called for Keir Starmer to resign in February, accusing him of only listening to a factional group who make bad decisions. And Danny Kruger is a Reform UK MP who defected from the Conservatives last year. He says the two main parties have failed, and the only people with any public support are now what he calls the little ragtag crew of us up in the back corner of the House of Commons. Welcome to our panel, welcome to our audience here in Westminster. Good to see you, and of course, welcome to you at home. You can join in the conversation on social media or just sit back and see what everyone's got to say here. This is our first chance to hear what voters, what our viewers make of what's been happening at Westminster. Let's take our first question from April. April from Pom.
Would a change in leadership with Labour actually help, or is it just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic?
What do you think, April?
I feel like I'm worried that the MPs in Westminster have amnesia. Like, we've been here before and it didn't end well, so why are we doing it again?
Well, Michael, you've seen several endings in your time.
I certainly
in the Conservatives. You orchestrated one of them yourself, actually, with Boris Johnson, I seem to remember. Knifed him in the back or the chest, depending on how you want to put it. What's your answer?
I think that it could, but it's not enough simply to change the face, the voice. It's not enough simply to say that someone is apparently more charismatic or a better communicator. There needs to be a strategy, a sense of purpose and a sense of mission at the heart of government. I think Keir Starmer's tragedy has been that a palpably decent man with broadly the right motivation to be in public service didn't come into government with a plan to transform the country effectively. And we've seen in the succession of policy U-turns, in the change of people at the top around him, the consequences in Westminster of that, and now we're living through the consequences more widely. So whether it's Wes Streeting or Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband or any of the other potential alternatives, they need to lay out a case. They need to make an argument. In her resignation letter, Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister, who's a widely respected figure, made the point that a fear of getting involved in an argument meant that Labour, and in particular the Prime Minister, didn't make arguments. And critical, I think, to success for the country is that the next Prime Minister needs to identify what needs to change economically, what needs to change in terms of border security, what needs to change in terms of dealing with extremism, and to have that coherent vision which so far, tragically, has been lacking from this government.
And if you had to choose one candidate, at the moment we don't have a candidate, there's kind of shadow boxing going on at present, no one's actually declared, who do you think would be best placed to do it?
If I said of any of those who've put their names forward so far that they were my favourite, that would automatically damn them. But I have actually said in the past, the person in the cabinet who I think would be the best Prime Minister, and that's the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. I think that she is easily the most intelligent, tenacious and capable of all of the people around the cabinet table. But it is a symptom of the difficulty that Labour find itself in, that the person who is the toughest and smartest is the person who has been ruled out as a potential successor.
Jenny.
I do think that there is something. Your questions, I think, speaks to what is going on in political life today and observing that there have been 6 prime ministers in the last 10 years. There were 6 prime ministers in the 50 years prior to that. So there is, I think, a difference in the tone of politics and the desire of politicians when something is not working straight away to want to make that change. I don't think the public like it. I think the public wish that politicians would sit down, hammer out their differences, come to a more unified position, and then present that to the public. That is what I think.
What is behind April's question? If she's saying, would a change of leadership actually help or make no difference because you're going to lose anyway, i.e. rearranging of deck chairs on the Titanic, what's your answer to that? I
think we're 2 years into a 5-year term. I think you speak to anybody who's been Prime Minister, they talk about the first 2 years being the most frustrating, being the time when they look back and wish they had known what they knew later on in their political career so that they could have made more progress with it. I am very frustrated about the speed of change that we've been able to bring. We've done a lot, but we have not moved fast enough. I think that message from the public is crystal clear, and we have to focus on moving faster, correcting some of the things that we inherited. We had some good news today on economic growth and on waiting times in the health service. Things are starting to get better, but the public is quite rightly very demanding of us. But I don't think what they're saying to us is, we want you to spend months and months looking in on yourselves, arguing, having faction fights and personality contests. I honestly do not think that that is what the public of this country want.
So Andy Burnham has made a move in that an MP, Josh Simons, says he will stand down from his constituency seat in order to allow Andy Burnham to stand. Should the National Executive Committee allow Andy Burnham to stand for election? On a purely human level, and I speak as somebody who I fought 4 general elections, I won 3 and I lost 1. Each time I got elected to Parliament from my hometown in Darlington, nothing would have made me stand down from my seat, absolutely nothing. I was completely dedicated to it, and I saw that as the biggest responsibility of my life, to fulfil that promise to the people who elected me. I do find it, I think there's this thing now where you're sort of treating the electorate like pawns in your imaginary political chess game, and I think it's I don't think it's to be encouraged at all. What happens in terms of whether Andy gets to be a candidate, not a candidate, all of that is for tomorrow, I think. And I think it's possibly for today, Jenny. I mean, things are moving pretty fast. You might want to wait. The BBC is saying it understands that Keir Starmer will not seek to block Andy Burnham standing for election. Is that your understanding?
I honestly, I hadn't heard that, but if that's the decision, I think that what needs to happen is we have a big process in the party. The NEC gets involved, local members need to be involved as well. They choose their candidate and they put that choice. The people who are missing from some of this conversation is the voters. Voters decide who their MP is. It's not something that gets stitched up. You don't choose who comes after you. I very much hope whoever the Labour candidate is successful. I will go to Makerfield.
Well, that's going to be Andy Burnham, so you hope he's successful.
Absolutely. If he's the Labour candidate, I will be there. I'll campaign for him. Makerfield has had some fantastic MPs in the past. Yvonne Favard was an amazing MP, dedicated. Before that, you had the wonderful Ian McCartney. It's a great part of the world, and whoever stands for Labour, I'll be there and campaign alongside them.
Jenny mentioned about growth. Yes, okay, we may be better than Japan or Canada at this stage, but if we're growth at 1% or sub 1%, 3% inflation, where are we going to? I want the next leader to set out how we're going to grow and support small businesses. I've been to Number 10, I've spoken to ministers there, talked about how we're the engines of growth, but I'm not seeing a plan. So whoever the next leader is needs to set out that plan.
And do you want Keir Starmer to be that leader? I
want someone with a plan to set it out. And it may not be Keir Starmer. I'm not sure.
The figures that we had today, though, 0.6% for the first quarter, that is strong growth. And I think that finally we're starting to see that growth in our economy.
Man in the grey and white top.
You talk about change. You can draw a straight line back to Rachel Reeves' first budget, £68 billion of tax increases. I mean, it's all gone wrong for Labour ever since that first budget. That would be the point I'd like to make.
I mean, that first budget was tough because we had to fill a massive hole that was left for us in our public finances.
You're going to get
that
lots
had
of
to be done.
comments, and I'll come.
Cool.
Don't feel you have to answer. I'll come back to you and give you a chance.
Okay.
No, not at all. But I'll definitely give you a chance.
Okay.
Yes, man there in the dark blue top.
If it's the case that Keir Starmer is replaced as Prime Minister by one of the other potential candidates, is it really appropriate that those candidates who will have a very different policy to the Prime Minister who was elected 2 years ago should go into that position without any oversight from the electorate?
What, without a general election, you mean? Right, OK. Steve, let's bring you in here. Would a change of leadership actually help Labour, or just be a rearrangement of the deck chairs on the Titanic?
Well, look, I think, as some of the audience have said, I think there needs to be a policy set out and a plan, and that's certainly what we're calling for. We're not calling for Keir Starmer to walk out the doors of number 10 immedially and someone... Well, not someone to replace him immediately. I think there
but you want him to go, don't you?
Oh,
I mean, you were part of the 11 unions that signed a letter saying things have got to change, and he's not.
I was one of the first to call for Keir Starmer to go. I think if he'd have gone in February, we wouldn't have found, the Labour Party wouldn't have found themselves in the position where the voters have come out and sent a loud and clear message, actually, to say that they voted for change 2 years ago. They haven't seen it, and I think that's been clear across the board. What we've seen in Wales has been a decimation of the Labour Party, and I think it's been because Keir Starmer's not trusted. He promised to deliver change. So I think what our position is certainly is that Labour trade unions is we want to see whoever's put in front of us, what they're going to deliver for that change, how they're going to deliver new policies. I think they need to be bolder in their approach to what they look at, and I'll certainly be making the case of what they're going to do for the fire and rescue service that was decimated after 14 years of Tory rule. However, in the last 2 years, we've not really seen too much of a detachment from that. We feel that we're still in austerity. We're still facing job losses, still facing fire stations being closed. We haven't seen the change that's been promised. So
and who do you think could bring that change?
Well, I don't know at the moment. I just want to make sure that the right person...
You must have a view, come on.
Well, look, who knows? Who knows what the PLP are going to put in front of us?
Yeah, but I'm asking, who would you like to see as the next...
I'd like to see someone that's going to invest in public services, invest in jobs,
and would that
give a bold plan.
Would that be Andy Burnham?
Well, I think Andy certainly
choice?
shouldn't have been blocked in the Gorton and Denton by-election. I think that was outrageous. And I think I've talked about this faction at the top of the Labour Party, the likes of McSweeney, Mandelson and Starmer have had their clutches around too much of the Labour Party. Democracy, I believe, has been lost. Trade unions have not been listened to.
Sure, but you made it clear that you don't want Starmer to say, this is your moment to put your money where your mouth is. Who would you like to replace him?
Well, we're a democratic union, Fiona.
And I'm just asking your view.
Yeah, well, my view is the view of my members, and we'll discuss it at the right time. We'll see whoever comes in front of us, whoever that is, we'll make some demands of them, and whoever delivers the best for my members and fixes the fire and rescue service will do well to get our support.
Danny. I mean, Nigel Farage has said that Keir Starmer is the greatest asset
to
reform the UK. True. So, in a way, would you actually like him to stay on?
Well, I mean, to take the question seriously, I don't think it is the right thing for the country to have another change of leadership, especially when the inevitable result of that will be the government shifting further to the left, because they'll have to, because that's what the unions are going to demand, and it's what their backbenchers demand. The fact is, it doesn't matter who it is, because the Labour Party is absolutely unable to govern in the national interest because of the split. I'm afraid it's the same in the Tory party. The two main parties are completely split, and that's the result of poor leadership, all sorts of problems that we can identify going back years. But here we are now. The biggest challenge facing the country is how to get money out of the welfare budget and into the defence budget, because that is the absolute priority for our country. The Labour Party can't do it. Every penny that you spend in income tax is going on welfare. And they can't make any cuts because the Parliamentary Labour Party will not let them.
That isn't actually true.
Well, you couldn't make any cuts at all. You tried to make a couple of billion.
You spend on the health service.
Yes, no, but the entire
education, police.
But the entire income tax receipt is the equivalent of the welfare bill. So that's what's got to change, and you can't do it.
Which includes pensions, of course, it's worth saying.
But the fact is, they can't make the changes that the country
over a third of its
needs. And we won't get that under this government, I'm afraid. So I do want a general election. That's what we need to have as soon as possible. But I don't have any faith in any of the candidates that are coming through on the Labour side.
Man in glass in the blue shirt.
So we've wasted 2 years, right? And everyone's been crying out for change, and there's a lot of blame that's going by. It would be useful to analyse why we wasted 2 years. You know, opposition parties, do they have the same access to resources and policy development? As we hear, well, we've lost these 2 years, too bad. We don't want constant merry-go-round of different governments coming in and not being able to effectuate change. So is there anything that could be done in terms of resources or in terms of the parties in waiting so that we don't have this situation again?
Well, open the books a bit more so they can actually see what
they
they're
say
dealing with.
we have to look at the books, we have to open the books, it takes us time to get up to speed. We don't have time to wait, to wait for that.
Woman here in the green top.
You mentioned change, but I think it's impossible when we have a country that is so divided as we are, and I don't honestly see any party being able to unite us at all.
Can those of you who've got your hands up are going to come back to you in a moment. Can I just have a show of hands now? And let me just say again, as I did at the beginning of the programme, you are representing the electoral picture across the nation. Vote share at the general election, we take into account what's happened at the local elections as well. Some of you will have your own reasons for wanting Keir Starmer to go, because you don't want Labour to stay in. But how many of you think Keir Starmer should go? Okay. So no, I would say that looks like not quite half to me. All right. Now, you had your hand up in the blue sweater. Yes, let's hear what you've got to say.
I think going back to something you said about changing the agenda and changing the way we move forward after these local elections, I think the main thing is people associate that agenda with the leader, which is currently Keir Starmer. We've seen constant U-turns, scandals with Mandelson, promises in the 2024 election that were broken in the first budget. So they associate constant mismanagement and basically lies for a lot of people with Keir Starmer, which is why I believe that moving forward, they're not going to, if you change the agenda, they're still going to associate the previous mistakes with Keir Starmer, I believe.
Okay. Man at the very
Can
back.
I respond to that?
I'm going to get a few points. I'll come back to you now.
Okay, thanks.
Man at the very back. Yes, you, sir.
Well, talking about the changes, I don't think anybody would be brave enough to do other than Mr. Bean, because one has to
other
be
than Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's not an MP, and anybody takes on under the
Well, he's not
circumstances.
real apart from anything else, but yeah.
Well, with the economy we're under at the moment, I don't think anybody would succeed.
All right. Let's hear from the guy in the grey sweater. Yes.
Is there like a more cursed job than being Prime Minister? Because I feel like every 2 years we have a similar thing where people are calling for the Prime Minister to go, and I think it's better to have stability for the long term. And obviously it's not surprising, politics is full of self-interested people, but why is there always backstabbing happening? I think that it's good for the country if there's more stability.
All right. Listen, that sort of brings us on to our next question, which I'm going to move on to. Before I do, I just want to let you know at home that we're going to be in Dumfries next week. So if you live in or around Dumfries, you'd like to come and be part of the programme, put your question to our panel, go to the Question Time website, all the instructions are there. So yes, that takes us on to our next question, which is from Ollie Walsh. There you go.
Is modern politics making Britain ungovernable, with Prime Ministers unable to survive long enough to fix anything?
Now, Jenny, I know you want to come back to some of those points, but I know this is also something you feel strongly about.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to ask that question, I think, at the moment. I think what's happened is there is so much focus on the person at the top, and there is the sense that if you change the person at the top, all of the problems somehow resolve themselves. And I just think we have to be a bit more honest and adult about some of this. There are huge challenges facing our economy. Look at the geopolitical situation, the situation that we inherited. There are amazing things that we have done actually in the first 2 years. I would like to go faster, but we've done renters' rights, employment rights, there are more police, we've done work on violence against women and girls. There are things that we are really proud that we have done, breakfast clubs for young kids, things that are going to make a real difference in the long run, but you're not feeling it right now. And I think that desire to feel the change is really palpable. And if I genuinely thought that changing one person in the entire government, even if that person is the Prime Minister, would somehow unlock that growth or make things happen more quickly, then I would be absolutely for that. But I really don't think that is, you keep trying the same solution, which is about changing the person and expecting a different outcome. I don't think that that's really what we need to do. I think the point about stability is absolutely right. It needs stability, it needs focus, and it needs clarity and determination to do the things that need to be done to get this country back on the right path.
But Jenny, how is with the best
Why does it
will in
keep
the world,
happening?
No, but how with the best will in the world is Keir Starmer actually going to be able to do anything? Because we've seen the problems he's had with getting things through with his backbenchers, with the welfare, the changes to personal independence payments, for example. You're now in a situation where you've got open revolt in the party, you've got key figures resigning, someone who's even prepared to give up his seat and everything that comes with that, the income apart from anything else, give up his seat in order to try to change the leadership.
Yeah.
How can, in that position, Keir Starmer actually get anything done?
Well, look, things are febrile, all right? This week, it's been a week of real drama. Emotions are running high. Things do need to change. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. But what do you do about that? Do you have a whole psychodrama play out in front of the public where they're left out of it and it's all about what's going on in the Labour Party? Or do you sit down, really have an honest conversation at the top of government about what needs to be done and what, if anything, needs to change and how to work differently? That is what I would prefer to see. I think these things are much, much better settled through dialogue and collaboration and cooperation, as they must have been done in the past. You're not telling me that in the 50 years prior to 2010, that there were never differences or huge battles at the top of government.
Well, we've got someone who witnessed them firsthand.
Absolutely were, but they were resolved in a different way.
Well, quite often the leaders win. I mean, I'm talking
not
Theresa
often,
May.
yeah.
Well, no, OK, but certainly in the last 10 years. But in terms of going further back than that, I get that.
6 prime ministers in the last 10 years.
And then
that's
6
not
in the last
great
50,
governance.
as you made the point. So you were there in part of the demise of 3 prime ministers. The question is modern politics making Britain ungovernable? As someone who had a kind of ringside seat at all that, what's your view?
No. Britain is eminently governable. It's just been badly governed because we haven't had the leaders who are capable of imbuing government with a clarity of purpose, making their case with a quality of argument, and attending to detail. And the final point is critical. Being Prime Minister is an intense, grinding process that requires close attention to the work of change. And we have had leaders like that in the past. There are other countries that have leaders like that now. It used to be the case that Italy was a byword for political instability, with prime ministers changing with the seasons. But Giorgia Meloni has been a highly effective prime minister of Italy. Canada, not often a country that inspires, but in Mark Carney, not someone with whom I agree on everything, you've got a leader who has the technical ability combined with a political vision to make a difference. And during the time that I was in government, and Danny was alongside me, we did make changes. You might not have liked them, but it's undeniably the case that the schools system now is very different from the one that the Conservative government or the coalition government inherited in 2010. It is the case in a huge range of things, from universal credit, one of the biggest transformations in the welfare system, through to the environment. Significant changes were made, and they can be delivered. But one of the problems that we've had is that politicians, including some in my own party, have preferred to outsource responsibility, accountability, and authority to institutions that are not accountable. And the critical thing is, as a result, we have seen either our courts through the system of judicial review or arm's-length bodies and quangos, because politicians have shuffled off responsibility for taking decisions, act as blockers to the change the country needs. So the country is eminently governable. It's crying out to be led. But in order for that to happen, we need to have politicians who are going to take back control more than a slogan. They're going to make it their mission.
And Michael, just give us a sense of, because Jenny is obviously going to be careful what she says right now, for obvious reasons, but just give us a sense of what it's like, when you've got all these machinations going on, people vying for position, thinking, should I put my head over the top now and say I want to stand as leader or not, or, as you would know, obviously, with Boris, saying, actually, I know I supported you, but now I'm going to not support you. What is that like?
Well, the human drama is compelling for people who are watching from outside, horrifying, of course, for the individuals concerned. And I think it's important to remember in the case of all of them, Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham, the rest. Yes, They'll be ambitious. It's not a crime for a politician to be ambitious. But they will also be actuated by a sense of mission and a consideration of what they consider to be in the best interests of the country. By definition, talented people, those capable of winning the crown and holding it, are people who could succeed in other areas and in other realms. So while it's entirely understandable that we want to see things through the prism of Macbeth or Julius Caesar, I think it's important also to recognise that while there are many things that, for example, Ed Miliband has done to this country, which I powerfully disagree with, I don't for a moment doubt the sincerity and the patriotism of Ed Miliband in wanting to serve in public life.
Woman here in the pink top at the front.
Yeah, I just wonder that in the past 10 years, we've had all these prime ministers. The elephant in the room is surely Brexit 10 years ago, and we're still living through the, I think, change in political allegiances that Brexit brought about, and also the damage that has done to the growth prospects of the UK.
Well, I think we may come to that in a moment, so hold your fire on that. Yes, woman in the black top and the stripy T-shirt.
I think fundamentally human beings don't like change. I think we are all very impatient, and what that means is nobody has time to wait for change to be implemented, for us to see the effects of the policies and the things that have been put in place. And I think that's where we're at. I think it doesn't matter for some parts of the electorate or the voters, it doesn't matter what you say to them. Once they hear one thing, even if you give them the facts, they don't unhear it or change their mind in that. So I think there are a number of things that make the job hard, and which is one of the reasons why I think he should stay, because he needs time. Everything takes time. It cannot be done like that.
Okay, man at the back in the blue jacket, yeah.
Labour were elected on a ticket of change, right? Yeah? They got in, they threw the manifesto in the bin, and they put, no pun intended, a red line through everything. Starmer can't do anything because of the left. The middle are looking at, shall we go Streeting, shall we go Angela Rayner? And I have to disagree with Danny, because Danny, we are not around reform. We are not a ragtag party. We are a party that is going to form the next government. And that is the scary thing for Labour. I never thought I'd agree with Mr. Grove. I never thought I would. But some of the things you say are pure sense. The leader that will come in will have their own agenda. What is it? Is it Andy Burnham, far left? Angela Rayner, who says she's a socialist, but really she isn't, she's middle, right, yeah? Wes Streeting, who is a protege of the Dark Lord, right, yeah? and then you've got Starmer. Do you know, personally, I wish he would stay. He's the recruiting sergeant for reform. Danny, get him to stay, please.
And the man next to you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the question was about whether this is a modern political issue, but is it not more of a parliamentary Labour Party issue? Because the way our Parliament works should mean that Labour can get the stuff done that they want to get done. But for the last 2 years, you haven't done that. And now we're in a situation where it's unclear that any of the candidates would have a mandate within the party to put forward what you have in your manifesto. So whether we like the views or not of Keir Starmer or other members of the party, my question is, do any of the candidates actually have enough support within the PLP to get a legislative agenda forward or not?
I mean, that's a decent point, is it, Jenny? I'm going to come to you, Jenny. That's a decent point.
No, I mean, I know the PLP very well, and there are, it's, as ever, the Labour Party is a broad church, it's big tent politics, and all Labour governments in history have always had people in them with different views, and we find ways of making it work. And that's what we've had to do in the past. But
it's not working now, is it?
So there have been votes that have not gone through smoothly in the last 2 years, but the majority of things that we've wanted to do, we've been able to do. So the things that have happened just before the end of the last session, the very last piece of legislation we got through was the renters' reform.
Yeah, but in fairness, Jenny, the point he's making is a completely different one, which is, isn't Labour so factionalised now that whoever the candidate is who wins,
not.
and let's remind ourselves that no one has actually said they're going to stand yet,
No.
It's not going to be able to unite the
No,
party.
there's no evidence of that. I think what's happening, what you can look at in the last 2 years, there's plenty of legislation that has been put through. Renters reform, just the last piece of legislation that we got enacted, is going to make a massive difference to people who are renting in our country. They haven't felt the benefit of that yet because it's only just come in.
All right.
But there are the vast majority of pieces of legislation that went through in the last 2 years went through with massive Labour majorities because we actually agree on the majority of issues that we want to face.
Danny is both shaking his head and raising his eyebrows.
That's right, yeah. I mean, just quickly on the Renters Reform Act, that's going to be terrible for renters because it's going to drive people out of being a landlord. We're going to lose accommodation that people need for rental accommodation. So it's a terrible move.
But what about the question about is modern politics making Britain ungovernable?
I think the problem is the parties we've got. That's why the politics is in such a bad way. The two main parties are completely split. Yes, Brexit has sort of proved that split, but this goes back decades. The old economic settlement that sustained these two main parties, the Party of Capital and the Party of Labour, that isn't the economy we have anymore. And those two parties are now fundamentally split. And they can slightly paper over the cracks. You know, the Tory party has papered over its cracks, but it can't really move in any direction. Now they're in government, Labour are proving themselves to be split beyond repair. So fundamentally, we need democracy to do its job, which is what's happening. And to my point about the ragtag politicians, I wasn't talking about our brilliant party, sir. I was talking about the collection of small parties that now occupy this little corner of the House of Commons, the top side where we sit, the Greens, the Independents and us. We represent where the public now is, and it's a divided electorate, and it's pretty scary, I recognise. But in Reform, you have a party which is genuinely becoming a national party. You've seen that in the local elections of the last week. Across the whole of the United Kingdom, Reform is leading, and we are driving into the old Labour heartlands, the old Tory heartlands. We represent the realignment of the country around a new model of politics, which actually goes back to the old days, the kind of politics we used to have, in which we had patriotic politicians governing in the national interest, and crucially, united behind a leader who could govern. The other parties don't have that.
The man in the glasses, yes. I think you've got a T-shirt on, I can't quite see. Yeah.
Danny mentions democracy, but isn't the problem that Labour were only elected on quite a small minority of the voters? Surely we need a new electoral system that will actually reflect the wishes of the people of this country.
Right, so change the Prime Minister and the whole shebang. Right, OK. Yes, April, you answered the question in the first place, didn't you?
I think part of the instability that I'm not sure is being discussed is the financial instability. If we've had however many politicians in the past 10 years, that's equivalent to the 50 years before that. Every PM gets paid, right, after they've served their term. So if we're paying all these people, how do we afford that as a country? We have so many public services that need money. Why are we doing this?
OK, and there's a man in the middle there with the blue top on, yeah.
Danny mentioned two parties, one for Capital, one for Labour. Your party is a party of billionaires, and that's all you're interested in, the rich people, not the working man, and that's it.
All right. Steve, is modern politics making Britain ungovernable?
Well, firstly, I'll echo exactly what the last speaker said. Let Reform, for some reason, you've got Nigel Farage acting as if he is the voice of the working class, someone that's taken a £5 million donation. Look,
and also, I just point out, also, we have got Reform supporters in the audience as well, and we've already heard from one.
I've come directly from our conference, so we have representatives from all across the UK, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and we've been debating the future of our country, the future of our sector, and we've been quite clear what a Reform government would mean to us in 3 years' time. They've come out, Richard Tice has come out and said he would attack and challenge our pensions, our hard-won pensions. He would come for public sector pay. They would not invest in public services. They're quite rightly, all the people that they would benefit would be the billionaire class. And I think it's quite rich of... Sorry, I don't know. Danny, to sit here and say that the Reform government, would be able to fix the crisis that we see now. None of them are talking about the cost of living crisis. None of them are talking about the public services that have been decimated after 14 years of austerity. No one's talking about the inequality that exists. No one's talking about how we can start having a wealth tax to actually putting money in workers' pockets. No one's talking about those issues, because that's why people have gone out and voted the way they have done, because Keir Starmer has not delivered on that. We need someone, whoever that is, and I haven't got a favourite, I'll be honest about that, someone that's going to give bold policies, get rid of these ironclad fiscal rules and start delivering for working people, because they're the issues that workers I represent, that don't live in the Westminster bubble, that are out in our communities, that aren't getting the pay that they deserve. They've had their wages suppressed for too long. Public services are now through the floor. That's what we need to see the change for.
You wanted to come in, I think.
Yeah, just very briefly. I was very struck by Danny twice saying that the Conservative Party is split. He might disagree with Conservative Party positions, but I'm not sure what this big division within the Conservative Party is. As I look at it now from my elder statesman's perch, it's much more united than it was when I was involved, and indeed when Danny stood as a Conservative MP. There is a division, of course, though, in politics. That's a division between what Nigel Farage says one day and what he says the next. Because Nigel Farage was in favour of lifting the two-child benefit cap before he was against it. So, my consternation at Danny's claim that there are divisions racking the Conservative Party is matched also by my bewilderment at the speed with which Reform occupies a series of different positions. There are some lovely people in the Reform Party, but what they haven't yet shown is that consistency of purpose and mastery of detail that a serious party of government needs.
Do you want to respond to that, Danny?
Well, it was Michael talking about the importance of mastery of detail, as if that's the essential requirement of leadership. I mean, in Rishi Sunak, who Michael supported up to the bitter end, we had a master of detail. In Keir Starmer, we have a master of detail. I'm afraid just poring over the paperwork isn't leadership. What we need is a vision for this country and unity behind it. And that's what we have in Nigel Farage. We are a new party. We have come from nowhere to be the dominant party in local government now, consistently leading in the polls. A lot of work has to be done. And by the way, I will be the first to admit, we have to demonstrate to the country that we have the plan, the people, the purpose to lead. That is what we are doing. It is a process, and I am glad to say, to Steve's point, that across the country, working people are coming to Reform. They are abandoning the old Labour Party because it does not speak for them. So increasingly, we are demonstrating the consistency and, crucially, the unity that the public need from their leadership. And I'm very hopeful that in the coming months and years, we will convince maybe even Michael to join us.
Likely, or will hell freeze over?
No.
Okay.
My view is, apart from Shabana Mahmood, there is one person who is even better equipped to be Prime Minister of this country, and that is Kemi Badenoch. Okay. And I said in 2022 that she would put the fear of God into Keir Starmer. That has proven to be the case. If you want a leader of conviction who has both that mastery of detail and a united party behind her, it's
Let's
Kemi.
not do party political broadcast, not yet. OK, now you mentioned Brexit. We haven't done this as a subject for a while. It dominated my first few years on this programme. Bhavik Kimani, where are you sitting? There you go. Let's hear your question.
Is rejoining the EU the solution to addressing the UK's economic and social challenges?
And you've asked this question. What's your opinion?
I think it's been a disaster since we've had Brexit. We've had no benefits from it. I can't see the 350 million we were promised a week. And I think joining back in the EU sooner will definitely increase our prosperity going forward.
And does it worry you that, obviously there was a democratic referendum, people voted one way, it would be going against that?
It wasn't far enough, but that's democracy. I think it needed to be a bit more of a majority to make such a big decision like that.
All right. OK, Danny, let's come to you on this, because clearly this is something you feel very strongly about. So there are a number of facts and figures flying around. Let's give you a couple. By 2025, UK GDP per capita was estimated to be 6 to 8% lower than it would have been if we had stayed in the EU. There's another suggestion that investment is 12 to 18% lower than it would have been if we had stayed in the European Union. Do you take issue with those? Do you think rejoining the EU is any kind of solution?
No, it's not, and I do take issue with those entirely hypothetical suggestions based on I don't know what. We can all imagine what might have been and what should have been, and I agree that Brexit has not been delivered successfully. We haven't yet realised the enormous benefits to our economy of independence from a failing economic bloc. The key industries of the future, the ones that the United Kingdom already does and really could lead the world in. We talk about AI, about agri-tech, about life sciences, all sectors that the EU is crushing, and the United Kingdom now has the opportunity to develop the jobs of the future in. That's where our growth should be coming from. It's not going to come from rejoining the European Union. And a fact which is true, because it's based on historical evidence, in the 1990s, the share of the globe's economy that was generated in Europe was 30%. Today, it's 15%. The value of Europe to the world's economy has halved over the last generation. And yes, so it's making the point that this is not the bit of the world that we need to be looking to for the growth opportunities of the future. The same arguments that applied 10 years ago remain. We need independence in order to navigate the very, very difficult circumstances of our century. Yes, we need to do better in terms of a better trade deal with the EU, but rejoining is not the answer.
And can I just ask you, because a number of things were in the King's speech, and agreements are expected this summer, and I just wondered if you would tear those up. So a youth mobility scheme, so young Britons and Europeans can work and study abroad more easily. Would you get rid of that?
Well, if the price of that will be rejoining the customs union, aligning with their regulations.
At the moment it
isn't. No, there is no way that they're going to give us a youth mobility scheme on its own. Of course, it's a lovely idea that people should be able to come and go, young people should be able to come and go easily. But you've got to think about what is the package of measures that will be introduced.
So you're not going to go for that.
That's not a price worth paying.
What about I say phytosanitary agreements? My goodness, that was something I said virtually every week around about 2016. Yeah. So basically an agreement aiming to reduce trade barriers on foods, plants, animal products coming into the UK.
Well, again,
would you tear that up?
Well, we need a better settlement with the EU than was achieved under the pressure of a hung parliament at the end of 2019.
But this is an agreement that looks like it could go through.
But again,
reject it?
Only on this, I would like to have a full, proper reset with the EU that properly delivers independence, including in those crucial sectors to support our farmers and our growers. And, by the way, that includes Northern Ireland as well, which has been shamefully left out of the Brexit agreement. So I'm not satisfied with the deal that is being put together, because ultimately we're going to get the worst of all worlds, which is Keir Starmer making the United Kingdom into a rule taker, a colony of the EU like Northern Ireland is at the moment. That is not the future for us that we should want.
Jenny?
I mean, I just think that's complete rubbish. I think it's been a disaster from the start. I think the Tories almost willfully made themselves incapable of negotiating anything of substance with the EU, because they chose to use that subject to divide politics in this country. I'm glad that we have a government who has made it its business to reset our relationship, and we are negotiating the things that Danny said that the government that he used to support couldn't around youth mobility. We will get an SPS agreement because it's in our economic interests to do so. And it's in the economic interests of our European partners too. And we treat these negotiations...
Even if it costs £1 billion a year, which is something the EU suggested we'd have to pay for.
How much? I mean, the details of it are to be negotiated. That is what a negotiation is. We need to trade off, clearly, any financial contributions we need to make with the benefit to the UK economy and to businesses here. That is what negotiation involves. But you've got to enter into these things in a spirit of partnership, trying to resolve problems together. And the reason we have to do that more urgently than ever now is because we're fighting alongside our partners in Ukraine to try and win wars together. We have to work together with our nearest neighbours, productively, collaboratively, for the benefit of our economy, but also for the benefit of our security. And I think the public gets this completely, which is why they're really not interested into getting back into some of this ridiculous ideas and language around colonies and everything that Reform come out with. And I really hope that we can have a pragmatic approach to this, because our businesses are crying out for it.
Man there in the glasses and the blue sweater.
Yeah, I think we should join the EU. Because UK will join EU, and it will be a stronger country in terms of defense and economic growth, and the trade will improve. So yeah, definitely I am in favor of joining EU.
Okay, there's two men at the back. Yes, the one, you've got a blue sweater on, I think, yeah.
I just wanted to agree with the comments about Brexit. It's been a disaster since the vote, really, and the impacts of it have been catastrophic. It led to the downfall of the Conservatives. It completely tore them apart. Michael said they're the most united ever. That's because anybody who disagrees just goes to Reform, and it's just full of failed Tories.
And I don't know how anybody can vote for reform considering how much of a disaster Brexit has been. And Farage is the architect of Brexit. That's been a disaster. And if he was to be in the government, it would be a disaster as well.
Okay, man next.
I mean, depending on your opinion, we're lucky enough to have one of the architects of Brexit with us as well. I would quite like Michael to justify his claims that it would make Britain a better and more prosperous place.
All right, I also want to hear, because I know there are people here who support Brexit, and I'd like to hear from some of you as well. So, Michael, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is, Fiona, you mentioned some statistics, some figures. The truth is that the British economy, under Conservatives, and indeed under Labour actually, has grown at least as fast, if not faster, than our principal European neighbours. It is almost impossible to discern any negative impact from Brexit on the overall growth rate of the British economy. That's the first thing. Second thing is that, it's, as Danny said, and he's absolutely right, if we look forward to the growth industries of the future, if we look at fintech, if we look at agritech, if we look at AI, then in all of those areas, the EU's approach, the use of the precautionary principle, the risk aversion, the stifling bureaucracy, has meant that, in the words of the EU's own economic czar, Mario Draghi, that it's a desert for innovation. But Britain has advantages in all of those areas. We recently had in the House of Commons a Labour MP asking for the Brexit freedoms that enable people in his constituency to develop new agricultural technology to be preserved in any deal. And those freedoms, that growth, is endangered potentially by the negotiations that the government are undertaking with the EU at the moment. Now, I agree with Jenny. It is possible in negotiations and talks with other parties to get a win-win. But I am deeply worried that Labour are so desperate for political reasons to move closer to the EU that they will not negotiate from a position of principled strength, but from a position of relative desperation for a deal. Hence, the £1 billion price tag, when actually Europe sells more to us than we do to them. And in addition, you have to ask yourself, is a government that negotiated the Diego Garcia deal, the government that when British sovereignty was in question, handed over gazillions to a foreign power because it wasn't prepared to determinedly safeguard Britain's interests, is this the government that you want involved in those negotiations? Final point. Is it really the case, at a time when disaffection with politics, and in particular with established party sort of figures, is, as everyone has acknowledged, at a low ebb? Do we really want to say to everyone who voted to leave in 2016, well, Parliament tried to stop you between 2017 and 2019. You then voted in 2019 clearly to leave. In 2024, it was the case that Keir Starmer said, we're not going back in, we're not going back in the single market, we're not going back in the customs union. Do you know what? All of that was a lie. And you, the voters who hoped that this Brexit signal would say to the establishment, listen, we, the establishment, are saying to you, no. I think that would be disastrous for our politics, with no economic benefit accrued alongside.
And just to be clear, Keir Starmer is not saying that we should rejoin the EU. He's talking about a close relationship with the EU. I mean, as far as I can, I've just been looking into it, as far as I can see, Wes Streeting wants a deeper trading relationship with the EU. I'm not entirely sure what that means. I guess we'll find out. And Andy Burnham has said in the past that he wants to rejoin the EU. Whether or not he would make that part of his candidacy, time will tell. Steve.
Well, look, reflecting on the King's speech and the suggestion of a European partnership bill, I think that we don't see the detail of that. Jenny mentions what this would look like for business. I'd be asking questions, what does it look like for workers? And the protections that are there, making sure that actually the workers are benefiting from some of these changes. I think the debate around Brexit still carries on today, doesn't it? I think it was very divisive, and I hope we don't have to all go through those conversations and debates necessarily again. But look, there are advantages, I think, that would come towards workers if they had a closer relationship with it. So I'm intrigued by the European partnership bill, and maybe some more information will come out about that. And certainly as a trade union affiliate, we'd want to ask questions around that.
Right, I've got about 8 minutes. I'm going to squeeze in one last question from Graham Brown. Where are you sitting? Off you go.
Should welfare be cut to fund increases in defence spending?
Right, well, Danny, you've mentioned this before. Jenny, I mean, Labour has tried to get through cuts in welfare and failed, thanks to rebellion by backbenchers. I mean, do you think it should be cut, and do you think have any chance of actually getting it cut?
I think, well, you need to remember that a third of the welfare bill is actually pensions. But also, I think it needs reform. I think that we do need to do...
Does that mean cutting it?
It may well mean cutting it, but it doesn't. You don't do that because you want to cut it. You know, we've taken 500,000 kids out of poverty in the last 2 years. So there are things that our welfare system does that are really important that we preserve.
But do you not think in principle?
Let me
do you not think in
this.
Principle that welfare should be cut if we are actually spending more on welfare than when raising an income?
If you allow me, where I think we have a real problem as a country, and I don't come at this from a we need to get money out of the welfare system perspective, although that is a potential outcome of this, we have particularly young people who find themselves in a situation where it is really difficult for them to get out of a situation of being on some sort of benefit, and then they find it really, the lack of support and the ability to get the skills they need to get them into jobs that then they can go and build a career and get the education and training that they deserve and get into those apprenticeships. That is a real problem, and we should all be panicking about what is happening to some of our children and the lack of attendance at school, the inappropriate qualifications that they get, the way that the whole system seems to be against their opportunities. This is a real urgent problem facing this country, and our welfare system is not geared to enabling those young people to get the opportunities that they need. So I come at this very much from a position of wanting to see what the Alan Milburn work comes up with, because I think it's a real challenge that whoever was in power is going to have to grapple with, and there will certainly be changes to our welfare system that will be needed in order to make that change.
Right.
So that is where I think we need to look at this.
So Danny, we already know, because you've already said, do you think welfare needs to be cut to increase defence spending? What would you cut?
Well, we've announced proposals to reduce entitlements for people who have mild mental health conditions who currently can receive benefits that mean they don't have to work at all for the rest of their lives.
And how much money do you think?
Well, we think there's at least £10 billion to be saved, partly through that measure and partly through restricting benefits for recent migrants to this country who haven't contributed to the system. So there are real cuts that can be made, but fundamentally the way to reform welfare is, yes, to be much stricter and frankly more human about the way that we assess need. For many people, and Jenny's right about young people, we should not be consigning them to a life of idleness and the dole. We should be saying these are the jobs of the future that you need to be training for. We should be putting money that's currently being wasted on university degrees that just give people pointless qualifications and a lot of debt. We should be putting that money into proper skills training for our young people, and we should be creating the jobs of the future with meaningful training opportunities.
Okay, but just coming back to the cuts in welfare, because I've heard Reform say this every time asked, we'd get rid of benefits for people with mild anxiety. What percentage of the welfare bill do those people make up?
I don't know what that number is.
Well, then
Fiona,
how can you possibly know it's going to save you 10 million?
Well, I don't know excuse me, I don't know every fact and figure, but I do know that there is 10 billion...
Well, you've just given us a fact, which is £10 billion. We have no idea how you'd get to it.
Well, I can stand that up later if you like, Fiona, by providing all that. But the fact is there are £10 billion perfectly well assessed in terms of money that is currently going on people for whom the best future is not welfare. It is work, or it is the support that they can get.
Okay, so you've not looked at that into yourself, you've just been told that, and that's what you're repeating, by the sounds of it.
Well, that is our policy, to find £10 billion worth of savings through reduction in entitlements, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the question...
Welfare cuts to fund defence spending.
Yeah, I don't know why it's always the case that we have to balance up welfare and defence. Why is it always that equation?
Well, I guess people think the money has to come from somewhere, and that's maybe one place it should.
I think the conversation is around the fiscal rules, the ironclad fiscal rules. I think that is why we're in the position we are now, because we haven't seen investment. And look, we can talk about welfare.
So which fiscal rule would you change? Which fiscal rule would you change? Then?
I think there needs to be a wholesale change, a complete change of the approach that Labour have taken. Actually be a bit bolder in their policies. If Labour want to win... Possibly, if Labour want to win in 3 years' time, they need to come out and they need to start investing in public services, in the public sector, services that actually benefit people, wages back in people's pockets. That's what our members are telling us. That's what the trade unions, 6.5 million trade unions represented in affiliated unions, are saying. You need to start delivering for workers, and there is no talk about that. So I don't think the question is around defence and welfare. I think it's about what we're going to do for people in the communities that are suffering now, that can't put food on the table for their kids, can't pay their energy bills. That's what needs to be fixed.
Michael.
For me, the welfare system and the approach that we should take should not be about saving money. It should be about saving lives. The whole point about the welfare system, I think everyone has made this point across the panel, is that it is there to give people fulfilment and purpose in their lives. Danny makes a point about anxiety and depression. I know that for anyone living with anxiety and depression, having a sense of purpose and structure in your life, being in an environment where you are encouraged to achieve something more with your life, that is the best cure, and even better cure than medicine, for anxiety and depression. So our welfare system should be oriented towards getting people into work, and that means the type of face-to-face interrogation and support that ensures that people do not take the option of a life on welfare. They recognise their own lives and the lives of those who care deeply about them will be transformed if they are back working with a sense of purpose. That's the single most important thing. Yes, funding our defence appropriately is right, but here I'm afraid I agree with Steve. We should not be making either-or choices between welfare and defence. We should be designing a welfare system in order to encourage human flourishing.
One at the back, blonde hair, yes.
Hi, Danny, you're saying you're going to save 10 million? Sorry, 10 billion.
10 billion, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that as well. But the triple lock, the increase alone is 15 billion a year, so I really don't see how that's going to make much difference.
And you, of course, want to keep that?
We do indeed, yes. I mean, there are major commitments that we need to make, including to our pensioners, at least over the next Parliament. These are people who have contributed and who are not in a position to increase their income through working. So we think the cuts should come from the working age welfare bill, not from pensioners.
Just a minute, I've got about a minute left. Yes, man, a bit further forward. You've got a dark shirt on. Yes, let's get a microphone to you. There you go.
Jenny mentioned earlier that young people having opportunities to go into work is very important. And on the flip side, you've got a rising cost of adult social care. I'd imagine a large portion of pension is being spent on that. It seems like we can solve this problem by encouraging young people into the adult social care sector. The last Tory government were willing to, enact a national service for young people, but we've got an aging population. Can we not solve this by ensuring young people have opportunities to care for elderly and hopefully improve society at large?
Get them to work in social care. All right, I've got about 15 seconds. Yes, woman in the green.
I also wanted to pick up on Jenny's point about skills and training for young people and schemes like the Youth Guarantee. Without the businesses providing and creating those jobs for those young people, then the scheme is just an empty promise. What's being done to create those jobs for young people to go into?
Okay, well, thank you for your point. I'm afraid we are out of time. Who knows? I wonder if anything's happened while we've been on air. It could have. No one's told me. But anyway, who knows what it'll be like tomorrow. To the panel, thank you very much for coming on this evening. To you, thank you very much as well. It was very short notice and you all turned up really grateful. Thank you for making your points and questions. And of course, thank you to you at home for watching. Next, we're in Dumfries if you want to come along and be part of the audience. But for now, from Question Time in Westminster, bye-bye.